This is Red versus Blue, episode number 71. My name is Mike Stark.
And I'm Keith Curry.
We took a few weeks off and we are back again, but there's always a bunch of stuff piled up when we get back. It's like the mail collecting after going away for a while, right?
We got plenty on the porch today.
Okay. Let's start with something that really hasn't been in the news over the last couple days, but it's still bubbling under, I think, is the attack on Venezuela.
Well, yeah, it's hard to know really where to begin. We'll just leave the whole Minnesota mess aside. But people will remember that a few days ago, we decided to abduct the president of Venezuela and kill 80 or so Cuban mercenaries who were there as his Praetorian Guard to protect him and to decapitate the government and bring him back for trial. We also decided to appropriate Venezuelan oil, which we will now apparently sell to finance whatever it is that we think we're going to finance with it. And we're off to the races. Now, people may think that this is, the second bombing after Iran or after Yemen. In fact, this is bombing 622 of 2025, where we have attacked some other piece of other people's real estate. So there we go. It's bad news for Cuba, who faces economic collapse because it's going to cut off their oil and economics. Bad news for China. But we kept the Maduro regime in place, except for Maduro. His vice president is now running things in consultation with President Trump, and it remains to be seen what the outcome of that's going to be.
And, of course, all of this bombing moves into our next topic, which has several layers to it, the Nobel Peace Prize.
Yes, indeed. President Trump finally received a Nobel Peace Prize. It wasn't his. It belonged to Maria Machado, who, as would have it, was the opposition leader in Venezuela who had been forced into exile by the government and was living in the United States, was believed by most to be the duly elected legitimate leader of Venezuela. However, she was not put back in office by President Trump, although he did accept the award and proudly displayed it as if it were his. Mike, it's interesting to know that twice now this has happened where someone has won the Nobel Prize and has seen fit to give it to somebody else.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
The first time was a German who received it for literature, and he decided that he would give it to Joseph Goebbels during the Nazi regime because he was trying to curry favor with Mr. Goebbels. The second time this has now happened has been with President Trump. And let me just say, he blamed the Prime Minister of Norway, saying that because Norway didn't give him the award, he's no longer going to be focused on peace, which is sort of an odd thing to say once you sort of have a peace prize, hanging from your neck and hanging on your wall. But the award has made him the subject of national derision. In politics, the thing you don't want to be is an object of derision. Now, he has a particularly thin skin for it, and he's been through it. But remember the images of President Ford falling down, of President Carter and his killer rabbits, of Dukakis in the tank. Generally speaking, that stuff is bad for politicians. And I will say that some of the most funny and vicious memes on President Trump receiving the award came out after this Nobel Prize fiasco.
So the Peace Prize president has talked about invading Greenland over and over and over again. And this has gone a few weeks. And let me first start by saying, is this one of those things where he creates a situation and then by the end of it, he is correcting his own situation?
Well, that's a description of a lot of things that happen in the Trump administration with relative frequency. But yes, it is. He did threaten invasion. Denmark, of course, controls Greenland. They are a NATO ally. NATO countries sent troops to Greenland in case of an attack by the United States, which caused him to impose significant tariffs on many of our NATO friends and allies. He then went to the economic summit in Davos, where he promptly backed down. He reversed the tariffs in light of an 800-point market drop. So the taco trade is clearly in evidence, although my friends who are active in the market call it market discipline. The market basically tells him that he can't do this. And the markets, frankly, have become a better counterweight than the Congress or the courts to curtailing his power. So the markets worked as markets will work when someone does something totally irresponsible. The potential invasion of Greenland, of course, was Putin's wet dream. It would have split NATO. It would have damaged our reputation and our allies and our alliances and our status in the world for years to come. He has some sort of an agreement worked out with the Greenlanders, apparently brokered by the head of NATO, for America to have bases in Greenland. So this is a great tribute to the president. Now, the president it's a tribute to is President Truman, who negotiated this agreement in 1951, and we have always been able to have bases there. In fact, we had 13 bases there that we closed down over the years that we can now apparently reopen under the terms of the 1951 agreement. So President Truman certainly was foresightful in anticipating this and in providing a means for an off-ramp for a problem that certainly needed an off-ramp.
Now, if my understanding is right, that agreement with Truman gave the United States pretty much carte blanche to do whatever they wanted in Greenland, right?
Absolutely.
Without having to own it.
Right? Absolutely.
Yet we're back to that same position again, and he's taken credit for that.
Well, he is. And of course, he said the reason that we needed to own it is he's like in real estate, and you don't want to put bases on stuff that you're just leasing. I mean, he learned that in New York. It's not a good real estate deal. And then he said, well, you didn't give me the Nobel Prize, so now I feel empowered to go and invade somebody, and it might as well be Greenland. That was sort of how the politics of that rumbled, stumbled, and fumbled into the abyss. But it's now done.
Oh, amazing. And we're 1 year in now.
1 year in. We did celebrate the 1 year anniversary of the administration. It seems like 150 years, but 1 year down, 3 to go.
Did we celebrate it? I didn't remember any celebration, but
the president himself appeared at the White House press conference table with a large 2-inch book full of his accomplishments. He went through it and read. He didn't actually read any of it because he doesn't read. Flipped the pages. He told everybody it was the greatest list of accomplishments ever. Promptly dropped it on the floor, then moved on to talk about something else.
All right. Well, we laugh about all of this stuff. We have fun with it because that's what we want to do on this podcast. But the impact that all of this has on politics, can you get into that a little bit?
Well, I think we found that the Democrats have a secret weapon where it comes to trying to take control of the Senate. The secret weapon happens to be President Trump. This week, he endorsed the challenger to Senator Bill Cassidy in Louisiana in the Republican primary. He's announced that Susan Collins, who is in a very critical district for Republican control of the Senate, one of the few Republicans that's vulnerable, that she should not be reelected. He forced Tom Tillis out in North Carolina. That's made what would have been a safe Republican seat now a challenging seat because the popular former Democratic governor is running there. He's refusing to endorse Senator Cronin in Texas and is playing footsie with Ken Paxton, a indicted, impeached, and now embroiled in an adultery-based divorce attorney general who's running for the Senate seat there. The Democrats have a chance if Paxton is the nominee and Talcaro is a Democratic nominee. Alaska is now in play because the former Democratic congresswoman who had defeated Sarah Palin and then was subsequently defeated herself is running for the Senate. So they have a credible candidate now. And maybe even Ohio, where the former senator is running, could be in play for the Democrats. All of that is, for the most part, a result of Trump trying to play in Republican politics. Karl Rove actually wrote this week, does Trump even want to win the midterms? Because all of what he is doing is working to help the Democrats, not only in the Senate, but particularly in the House, to take control. And I think they are going to take control of the House. The generic ballot right now is 48% Democrat, 43% Republican. But I think even with that sort of relatively narrow range, it portends good things for the Democrats. What's interesting, Mike, is that in order to respond to the affordability issue, Trump has fully embraced the socialist policies of Elizabeth Warren, banning corporate ownership of single-family homes, billions of Fannie Mae bonds, no dividends on stocks or stock buybacks for defense companies, government shares of private businesses, using 401ks for home buying, of course, his 50-year mortgage idea. I don't know. I think socialists probably want real socialists, but they can't get much more real than Donald Trump in terms of his newly announced economic policies. That, of course, is going to sow a division and discord and confusion, frankly, among Republican voters.
And what about the Republican politicians that have been supporting him with unconditional love, as I say, from pretty much the beginning? Is that going to put a chink in that armor?
Well, as we talked about before, and I'm proud to say, Mike, that we were first, and after we did our piece on Republican breakups, both at the Atlantic Magazine and the New York Times and CNN did long pieces about how the Republican coalition is beginning to splinter. And for those Republicans who are facing difficult elections, and many of them are, come November, all of this is going to make them be very sober and very thoughtful about their continued allegiance to President Trump. It was reported this week that by the New York Times that in his first year, Trump has personally profited more than $1.4 billion since taking office. That's more than all of the other presidents in American history combined over 250 years.
Amazing. And he's pulling it off, too.
So far.
Now, the other thing that makes people wonder, although after we dealt with President Biden and his age issues, and there were serious age issues, I have to tell you that Trump still holds up better than Biden in terms of the actual visual effect of watching him. But you think that you're seeing some chinks in that armor as well.
Well, that's because, Mike, you don't watch all 1 hour and 45 minutes of his presentations.
Okay.
And during this week, he confused Iceland with Greenland 4 times. And he did it in front of an audience of the world leaders and world economic leaders in a long and rambling speeches. He gives long and rambling nonsensical speeches now that divert, that involve multiple falsehoods, that are disproven before he finishes the next sentence, that are just basically incoherent. He engages in crazy postings on X and Twitter at all hours of the day. It appears he can't tell the difference between truth and lies. We're now seeing significant calls by many Democrats in Congress to invoke the 25th Amendment, which is where the cabinet decides he's incapable of office. That's probably not going to happen with this cabinet and vice president, but you're now hearing people talk about it. We talked about it when it came out, the movie about Ronald Reagan with Dennis Quaid. It was told from the perspective of the KGB officer who was his case officer, who was doing the workup on and the file on Reagan back in the Kremlin, going back to his actor days.
Right.
Can you imagine what the Kremlin file must look like on Donald Trump, or the file in Beijing on Donald Trump, given all of his very visible neuroses and psychoses that are there for all to see? Right. It's not only that Russia has a file or that China has a file. Every nation on earth has one. I mean, down to Nigeria and the Bahamas. Even the Venezuelan opposition appears to have a file, and they don't even have a government. So I think Americans are going to become more and more concerned about what are very self-evident demonstrations of cognitive decline, of disconnection from reality, and of just plain rambling foolishness from the president. To his credit, Biden had a staff that protected him in public view from a lot of that. It couldn't protect him from all of it, but there's no staff that's going to be able to keep Trump away from the microphone. So this is just going to get worse.
And I think that age manifests itself different with different people. Age with Biden made him a soft, quiet, old man. And it's made Trump a crazy old man. And I think that would be the difference between the two in terms of the age issue.
They certainly do manifest themselves differently. But in many ways, the way it manifests with Trump is more dangerous both to the nation and to the world. And it becomes harder and harder to ignore. And again, Biden at least had people that tried to protect him and tried to put him in environments where it was less emphasized. The same thing is not going to happen with Trump.
Before we close it out, and one of the reasons we get a jump on all of these issues, like you mentioned, the issue that we scooped the Atlantic on and the others, is because you're still kind of an insider in the Republican Party. With that in mind, are you seeing in your daily life and your daily discussions with Republicans any chinks in that armor?
Well, we are, Mike, particularly people who are involved in finance. I mean, money talks, and they understand when the market drops 800 points because Trump says something stupid, that it's because Trump said something stupid. And people react to that. People react when they see their local candidates lose because they're too tied to Trump. And we're seeing it in the polls. And so let me just talk a little bit about some poll data that's come out. Trump is pleading support among non-white people and young voters, hugely double digits among both of those groups. And really, he's losing amongst all voter groups relative to where he was before. 57% of Americans and 66% of independents say that the Trump administration is a failure. That's a very hard number to come back from. 56% of the nation believes we're on the wrong track, 37% on the right track. That's the 20-point margin that usually always spells political doom. 70% say the economy is only fair or poor. 61% say that we've gone too far on immigration reform. And this is Trump's signature big issue that he's most popular on. 71% of independents believe that ICE has gone too far. Is the country better off? 49% say no, 32% says yes. Now, the interesting thing is Trump's reaction to this is to sue the New York Times for conducting and publishing the poll. But the numbers don't lie. Republican activists, Republican politicians see these numbers, and they understand the implications of these numbers on their own campaigns, their own races, their own political effectiveness. It's still radioactive in the Republican Party to bail on Trump, just ask Senator Cassidy, but it's becoming increasingly necessary and required for Republicans to do so.
Now, it's been indicated in the past election that it's independents that many times sway the election one way or the other, or elections. And those numbers that you cited for independents are not good for President Trump, right?
No, they're horrible. Independents are now in many states, the biggest political bloc. Now, independents are not, let's be clear, they're not political moderates. There are Democratic leading independents, there are Republican leading independents, but they are people who, for whatever reason, chose not to identify with a party.
Right.
Nonetheless, they are the key determinants in who's going to win, because there's not enough Democrats by themselves or Republicans by themselves, nationwide or in most districts, to win an election without independent support. That's even true here in California. It's even true in a place like Texas. So when independents break, and they were for Trump before in the last election, but they have broke as big as any voter group, double digits, against Trump since his election. That is just disaster waiting to happen for Republicans and for the president's agenda going forward. Okay.
Well, midterms are going to start ramping up a little bit more, aren't they, at this point?
Filing closes in Texas for the Texas primary in March. Primaries in March. Filing's already closed. Filing closes in California in March. It's already closed in a few other states. So we're going to start having primary elections and debates about this. I understand today that the Republican National Committee is going to host a midterm convention to try and rally the troops. They'll put Trump out front, and I don't think that's going to help rally the troops in a lot of swing districts. The reapportionment wars continue. Virginia is now pursuing one that will be highly detrimental to Republicans. Florida is moving along a line that could be damaging to Democrats. But all in all, I think the reapportionment wars are going to balance each other out. There's not going to be a big gain either way for either party because of it. And so we're into the election. And again, the numbers don't look good going in for Republicans. Now, I will say this. The Democrats have you can't beat somebody with nobody. And the Democrats are still floundering around in the wilderness trying to find a coherent message and trying to decide whether they should be more socialist than Trump is being, or whether they should be more moderate like the new governors in Virginia and New Jersey. But again, I would point to those independent voters as being the voters that are up for grabs that the people should be focused on.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to watch it, and we'll probably take a little bit of a break now because I'm going on vacation. Keith went on vacation.
Bon voyage. Absolutely. Mike lived the good life.
And I'm guessing we're going to be with you again sometime after the Super Bowl. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And most importantly, share this with your friends. I think that if someone is introduced to this show, they will go back and listen to some of the old podcasts, and they'll get a kick out of it. They'll know what has happened in a lot of them, and they'll see how close to the right area we were on certain issues. Thank you, Keith. We'll see you in a few weeks. And this has been Red versus Blue.
Travel safe, Mike. Thanks, everybody, for listening.